Howdy, listeners. Today on the podcast, before our episode, we have brothers Jeremy and Michael, and they are going to give a quick plug for their app, Amity. Next episode, we'll have them on, and they'll talk about the app in more detail. Michael, Jeremy, welcome.
All right. Glad to be here. My name is Jeremy from Washington, D.C., and Amity is basically an app that helps Masons connect with each other and find lodges wherever they are.
Amity does a lot of things. It does, absolutely. Amity is a Tyler's book in your hand. We realized older methods, some of this stuff isn't real time anymore. And technology is out there. The rest of the world's using it. And why shouldn't Masons? So basically, Amity allows you to see, like Jeremy said, where lodges are throughout the world, your recognition status between grand jurisdictions from where you are a Mason. As of right now, we don't have dual lodge specific, but whatever your mother lodge is, that'll tell you where the recognition status is throughout the world where you could
travel. Sweet.
That sounds awesome, guys.
I got to give y'all the two questions I get asked when I tell folks about this here lately is, where do I get it and how much does it cost?
Sure thing. First things first, the easy one, Amity is free. Our goal is to create an app that everybody wants to use, and the way that we feel, we'd like to bring in services that Masons already use, already pay for, and earn some revenue through that. But the basic stuff, things like finding a lodge, things like having an online Tyler's book, things like checking into meetings, those will always be free.
Awesome.
As far as where you can find it, Amity is available now for Google Play for Android devices on the Google Play Store. It's also available on the App Store. You can download it for free. You can visit our website at amity.coperi.com, and there are links at the bottom of the page there, or just look in your App Store.
Go ahead and spell out Amity for us.
Yeah, sure thing. Amity, A-M-I-T-Y. Like my Grand Lodge is in Amity with your Grand Lodge.
Perfect.
Aww.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you for coming on and giving the plug for your app. We are looking forward to talking about the app in more detail on our next episode, and we are excited about this.
Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
Grant Gates, current junior warden of 148.
Billy Hamilton, current senior steward for 148.
And Gabriel Jagush, Master Mason with Fort Worth 148. And we have a special guest today.
My name is Jordan Roland, and I'm from Wichita Falls, Lodge 635. I'm the junior warden there.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So before we get into the discussions today, for anyone who hasn't figured it out yet by the title of the episode, this episode is about Masonry in Wichita Falls, and with a spotlight on Jordan himself, and Jordan Roland is our guest. So, jumping straight into discussion questions, I saw this question earlier, and it says, what is the officership of almoner? What does it entail, right? Not every lodge has an almoner, and I know that most lodges in Texas don't have almoners. But you might see it in your Scottish Rite Valley, or maybe the Shrine sometimes has some. But an almoner is basically in charge of charity, and they collect funds for guys that are trying to get out of arrears with their dues, or guys that just need assistance in general. And they also follow up on the other form, the primary form of Masonic charity, and make sure that guys are well taken care of. And they also follow up with the wives and widows and orphans of Masons who have passed away. In many jurisdictions, they don't really have an almoner because a lot of the almoner's responsibilities fall under the officer of the chaplain. So that's just a question I saw. That wanted to knock that one out of the way real quick. This one,
Alms for the poor.
Alms for the poor.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know in some jurisdictions too, there's like a committee that takes care of the same responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah. Fraternal
And,
Relations Committee is what it's called in our lodge anyway.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll have like the Sunshine Committee or the Trowel Team or the Chaplains Committee does that.
Yep.
In our lodge, it's called the Trowel Team. And then the Fraternal Relations Committee does the other half of that as well.
Yeah.
So this is a question that would be good for Rhit and Billy to take a stab at together. I want to get active again after going NPD a few years ago. How do I fix this, and what happens if I'm trying to get active in a different lodge or jurisdiction? Now, Billy, I don't remember if you were NPD or not, but I do know that you were inactive for a long time, and then you were trying to get active again in not only another lodge, but another jurisdiction entirely. So, Rhit, Billy, probably Billy mostly. How do you fix that situation?
So, just to start it off, Billy, I'll give the paperwork as far as to get current. You know, if you're NPD for more than 2 years, you've got to pay 2 years dues. If it's 50 years, you know, you only pay 2 years dues. The current year and the year you went suspended, whatever the dues were then. Fill out a form. You might get investigated, maybe not. If everybody knows you, you're reinstated. Voila. Take it away, Billy.
Right. Yeah. And actually, it's funny because I was just having a conversation about this with a friend from Chicago who came to see me while I was in Wisconsin. And he had this very same question. And so I was NPD, but there was if you've heard the previous episode, you've heard my paperwork story. But long and the short of it is it was about 15 years. And at the end of that 15 years, you know, I was expecting to have to pay all 15 years of dues, right? And I was willing to make that commitment. So I was more than ecstatic when I found out that I had to pay the dues for the last year I was active and current dues. So for me, in my case, my lodge in Lawton, Oklahoma, my mother lodge, is it was $35 when I left. It's $50 now. So I was expecting to pay hundreds of dollars. I paid $85. And I was in good standing again.
85?
Yeah, $85.
Nice.
I still pay $50 a year for dues there. That's one of the reasons why.
Something real quick that I thought was kind of interesting with a situation with a brother from Wichita Falls. He moved up here, and he was originally a Prince Hall affiliated Mason. And then he moved to a little town that's just outside Wichita Falls called Iowa Park, and they don't have a Prince Hall Lodge. So he wanted to join the Blue AF and AM Lodge. So what he had to do in order to join it was submit basically a letter to his Grand Lodge to discharge him. And then he would then submit a petition to our lodge. And it went through, everything was fine. He was voted in, and he had to take his degrees all over again, which I thought that was pretty interesting.
That was one of the options that was presented to me also when they had a hard time finding my previous records. Was they told me I may have to repetition. So if that's something, if it's easier for you to do that, that's fine. If you can usually it's just cheaper to be able to take your paperwork and get reinstated in your original lodge. Now, about the different jurisdictions too, I had to be reinstated in my mother lodge in Oklahoma before I could begin the process of transferring to 148.
And that took a minute.
Yeah. That was about 6 to 7 months with like a couple of emails and going back and forth, but it happened. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
I think for the longest time I was introducing you to other people as a member of our lodge, and it was you corrected me multiple times that you were still technically not a member of the lodge.
Right. Actually, and I remember when the vote came up for my petition for affiliation, I actually heard a couple of people on the side saying I thought he was already a member. So.
All right. So it can be quite an adventure to get active again, but hopefully with a good rapport with your lodge secretary and your grand secretary, you should be able to work it out pretty well. It's not as ugly as it seems. For anybody that is thinking about leaving Masonry and picking it back up, always remember, deem it. It's way easier to come back after a demit instead of NPD.
Right.
So
it can be. Either way, don't be intimidated by the process. You can make it happen. It's not that tough. It's easier than all the memory work you did to earn it in the first place.
Yep.
So do one or the other for sure.
Right. And, be active about it, right? Make sure to call the secretary for your original lodge. And if you can't get a hold of them, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call the grand secretary. They're there to help you.
Yep. Yeah, this is volunteers doing all this stuff, so the ball does get dropped.
Yeah, it's hard to discipline volunteers. But so third question is, how do you meditate on symbols? How do you meditate on symbols? We talk about meditating and understanding, and how often you are only worthy of Masonry once you have meditated upon and understood the symbols of Masonry. How do you personally, maybe this is not a prescription for everybody, but how do you personally meditate upon symbols?
Well, I would say that a way that I find, especially with our working tools, is approaching life. And if you're in traffic, for instance, Fort Worth traffic, I just experienced this the other day, and it's easy to get road rage and to flip somebody the bird, which obviously isn't very Masonic in essence. So before you can do that, you can take a look down at your ring and notice the square. You apply those, its meaning to your then condition, which there's tons of different ways to approach it. But I find that a direct way to analyze our working tools.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I've recently rekindled my love with meditation because Chuck Dunning's book, I'm about halfway through it now. It's fantastic. I've listened to his podcast, and he's really into the contemplative part of Masonry. And he has a lot of good tips and tricks, but something that my dad taught me a long time ago when it comes to meditating and clearing your mind, because it's so hard to get, something out of your mind and in focus, is he said, imagine yourself in an empty movie theater with a blank white canvas, no movie on the screen. It's just blank. And you zero in on that blank white canvas until there's nothing in your mind. You're just, you clearing your mind out. So I'll take sometimes and put something in the middle of that canvas, and it may be a working tool that I'll just focus in on and then just let my thoughts go wherever they go. And it's random most of the time, but every once in a while you get that cool epiphany of how it applies to your moral character. But usually I'm thinking about some random guy chiseling away in a temple, and it's like, all right, get back to center.
Yeah. I find one way to do it is to do a directed meditation like that. I'll picture myself, with the cryptic and, for example, with the capitular and cryptic degrees. Like, I'll often picture myself going down through different arches that are talked about in those degrees, and kind of thinking about what each arch might symbolize, and then what you find at the end, or picturing the two pillars of the temple and their decorations, and I try and decorate the pillars as much as I can with my mind's eye, and I put the pomegranate on and the lace work and the network and the lily work, and try and picture how massive these pillars are, right? Because we actually give dimensions for these pillars. And they're huge, Yeah. And so try and physically picture that. That's one way that I do things. Active guided meditation on the symbol. Another way that I think about it, lately I've been meditating on the keystone, and it's an active sort of meditation. It's not something that I sit down and I think about, but as I go through life, I'm trying to open myself up to more. Since right now I'm focusing on the keystone, what I'm trying to focus on is when things happen, just let thoughts about that symbol come into my mind, right? Like, how does this represent the keystone? How does this, what does this tell me about completion? What does this tell me about covenants? What does this tell me about the Roman tessere, right? Things like that. So as I go through the day, just let little bits of inspiration about one specific symbol come into my mind. But, that one's a little bit more difficult to do because it's not really focused or guided. It's just kind of,
No, another
surprise.
good tip Chuck had too was having a journal to where you pick a working tool and the principles of that working tool, and you journal how you use that effectively during that day. So, you're responsible for getting out there and putting it into action and then putting it into your journal. And, there were a few questions that he had, how did it make you feel kind of stuff that you put in with your journal. That practice can be pretty powerful itself as well. I've never done it in the Masonic sense, but in other ways I have.
Billy Grant, any input on that one, or do you guys want to move on to the main episode content?
One of the important things, too, is when you choose to meditate, too, especially if you have a lot going on in your house. I have 3 kids. Sometimes it's hard to find a place or a time to meditate. And so you have to be mindful of that. Sometimes it takes planning just to be able to find a place to meditate. Some good times is either, late at night after everyone's gone to bed, early in the morning. And then sometimes you just have to do kind of, rogue snatches of meditation, like on long drives. I've had like incredibly profound thoughts that, you kind of zone out, which I know is kind of bad when you're on the highway, but it's a quiet space. You have a lot of time for your mind to wander.
Yeah.
Don't connect to the universe too deeply while driving. But yeah, no, I've done the same thing.
No, I mean, if you just turn your radio off, you can still drive safely if you're on a highway with your cruise control set and get deep into thought. You're not going to get into that meditative state like you would in the corner of your room, Indian style on your yoga mat, but
yeah,
you're going to get some good out of it, because I find myself turning my radio off more times than not. Either work on the memory work or figure out some solution to a problem.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I noticed, that my stress level actually went down pretty significantly when I turned the radio off. When, even in like morning traffic and stuff, just turn it off,
Yeah.
It made, this was back when I had a 30-minute commute instead of what I commute right now. And it just made it easier. I was just not thinking about, you didn't have the music coming in. I wasn't thinking about I wasn't thinking negatively about the other traffic. I observed the traffic, and I observed that there were other cars there, but I was not irritated by the fact that I was being held up or anything. I've also definitely done tons of memory work, especially on long road trips when Sarah falls asleep in the passenger seat. I'm just mouthing the work, She's gone. She's dead to the world right now because she's passed out. So I'm just gonna go for it,
There's been a lot of long road trips that I've called Gabe and been like, "Hey, let's do some memory work, or let's open and close lodges."
Yeah.
I'll call Will sometimes too. It's like, let's just open and close lodges, baby.
All right. So for tonight's main episode content, as we already said, we're talking about Masonry in Wichita Falls with a special focus on our guest, Jordan Roland. And so, Jordan, again, we're happy to have you on here. First question for you is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic lens?
Sure. Yeah. First off, thank you guys again for having me. I appreciate the offer, and I'm glad to be here. Outside the Masonic lens, I'd say, I listen to a lot of music. Music is a pretty big thing in my life. I've been playing guitar since I was probably 9 or 8 years old, something like that. And so that's a big thing. I also play video games. I'm a diehard Nintendo Switch fan, so I've been really getting down on that lately. And pretty much currently my life is pretty consistent as far as I work. I'm a plumber by trade. That's what I do up here in Wichita Falls. And yeah, and then Masonry. Really, I've been really making it a point to get real active in our district. So that's about it lately, anyway.
Okay, so now that's another weird coincidence because right before the show we started recording the show. We found out that we both grew up in the same town, Lake Jackson in Brazoria County, Texas. You're a plumber, and I am a plumbing designer. So
very cool, yeah.
Yeah,
Strange
okay.
coincidence.
What? Did you guys just become best friends?
Something like that, maybe.
Do karate in the garage.
Gotta go get a bunk bed.
That's right, yeah.
So
all
many
right,
activities.
So, how old or when did you join Masonry, and how old were you when you joined?
So I joined Masonry in 2013, so I was 23 then. I was an entered apprentice in September 2013, and then I was raised in June of 14. So a decent little stretch there, but yeah, that was compared to some people that I've heard of. I went through it reasonably fast, but not as fast as others. But it was a pretty good experience. Whenever I joined down in Austin, Texas, at a lodge called Hill City Lodge, number 456. And whenever I lived in Austin, I was working for a video game company. Actually, I worked for a company called Kabam.
Okay.
That make mobile games and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. But in my free time, I actually didn't have a car at the time, so I had a buddy, Brandon Jenkins. He recently passed away, and he's a country musician. He's very well known, and just an outstanding Mason. He passed away, but he actually was the one that I was friends with him, and he said, "Hey, you come out to a dinner over at Hill City one of these nights, and just to show you." And I was kind of like, "Nah, I don't really have time to do that." But eventually one thing led to another, and I made my way out there. I had to ride a bus, and I had to walk about a couple miles to get to the bus stop, and ride the bus downtown. And so it was a whole process just to get to lodge. So thankfully my job let me work from home, and I was able to make that happen. So started going to Hill City Lodge, and then I knew that another lodge met on Mondays. Hill City met on Tuesdays, but on Mondays, the Austin Lodge number 12 met. They met at the Scottish Rite building. So, long story short, I basically made it a point to go up there a lot. I didn't petition for about 6 months after I started showing up. I just went down there and, made friends with people and helped in the kitchen. And I don't know why I waited. I just waited. So finally petitioned, and then here we are now. So
that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's kind of touching it's touching to hear that about Brandon. I think we were all kind of shocked when he passed so recently. Just has had me meditating a lot about the third degree.
That's right. And if any of you guys ever met with Brandon or spend a lot of time with him, I'm thankful I got to spend quite a bit of time with the guy. And that guy he was just like, nobody is a stranger. He's happy to be with anybody he's with. And he's a very open mind. He was very interested in, a lot of different types of philosophy, which is what really drew me to Masonry, to have somebody who wasn't just subscribing to one specific spiritual belief. He's very open-minded, and that's how I am. I still am till this day. And I genuinely, I have him to thank for it. So
wow,
he was a good man, definitely.
So then was Brandon the primary motivator for you to join Masonry, or was there something else as well?
Well, prior to me joining Masonry, I had done a lot of research on it. Obviously, it's easy to type in on YouTube Masonry and see the million different Illuminati conspiracies and junk like that. But, either way, seeing things like that intrigued me. So I read about it quite extensively, and at the time, I was really interested in a topic which is a topic I probably won't go very in depth on in this one, but in this podcast today, but is Kabbalah. I got very interested in Kabbalah, and I found out that, you know, Masonry is open to those types of ideas if you look for them within the degrees. So, so you know, whenever I found out that it was kind of the philosophy of leaving your religion and politics at the door, I thought, well, wow, I'm probably going to enjoy this, so I might as well give it a shot, you know. And I had a couple of friends who were already Masons as well, and yeah, they just kind of encouraged me to come, and I started going quite a bit. I mean, almost every meeting they had, and then finally I got initiated, entered apprentice, and and then whenever I was an entered apprentice, that actually was the first time I ever got the exposure to Scottish Rite. My teacher, his name was Oscar Oram, and he is a 33rd. And I would go to, he had a place behind his house called the Dog House, and that's where he would, I forget the word for it, but where you reshell bullets, you make bullets.
Yeah, just loading.
Yeah, loading. He would do that, but also had all of his Masonic stuff on the walls. He had trophies for various awards from his parts in various Scottish Rite degrees. And so that was my exposure to that, and pretty interesting as well. So
yeah, I gotta say, you know, we're talking about meditation and all that. Reloading ammo is one of the most amazingly cathartically meditative things you can do.
Yeah, many of you guys know him, Eskimo, down there at Fort Worth Scottish Rite. Yeah. He does that all the time. He's really big into that. But yeah.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about your lodge?
My lodge is Wichita Falls Lodge 635 in District 88, which is District 88 is comprised of, I believe, 7 lodges. But Wichita Falls Lodge is a good little lodge. It's just a little bit outside of Wichita Falls, and it's a great lodge. I mean, it's the current master is about my age, and other than that, there's a couple other people that are younger, but the majority of it is older gentlemen. So, we have a good lodge. It's, you know, as with most lodges, I don't know about y'all's down in Fort Worth, because y'all's is a pretty bigger area, but our lodge is up here. We went through this because I joined in Wichita Falls about 2 years ago. Whenever I first joined it because my dad was a fellow craft there. He took the fellow craft degree, so I actually got to raise my dad.
Oh, sweet.
That's awesome.
And that's pretty much the only reason why I joined that lodge as opposed to any other. So I just knew my dad's a member there. I'm going to join there. You know, might as well. So,
yeah.
But we've been seeing, especially this last few months, a huge growth in interest, because back then, 2 years ago, you know, we would be lucky to be able to open lodge, to have enough people, you know, and but now, the DDGM who's current, his name is Greg Talley, and I really admire that man a whole lot. He's very active in the Shrine, and lately he's been active in the Scottish Rite. But he's the DDGM that I feel like is really doing a great job with working with myself and a few other brothers, Will Bogart and David Lawson, a few guys from this area. And he's been really allowing us to run with the torch as far as, you know, up here, you know, I decided, you know, we need to really unify our district, because if my lodge is struggling to open lodge, I guarantee you Electra Lodge, another small town, or Archer City Lodge, again, another small town, they have to be suffering like we are. So my goal and inspiration for really trying to unify, I really wanted to break down the barrier of, you know, people having this misconception or illusion that once you're a member of this lodge, you really need to be active in just that lodge. You know, just because I'm a member here there's no reason why if I have the free time, I can't jump down the street and go down to the other lodges, So that's been kind of the ultimate goal. And with that came with there's a Prince Hall Lodge here in their district. They only have one lodge in their district, and their DDGM is the secretary of that lodge. Mm-hmm. So thankfully, at this recent Grand Lodge, as you guys know, they made it a lot easier for cross visitation. So we've been doing really good with inviting those guys to all of our stuff and going to their stuff, supporting them, because just like us, they're suffering as well as far as membership. So my goal has been to really unify the district, get these guys fired up about it. If there's guys who haven't showed up to lodge in years but are still dues current, we have a list, and we're going to work towards giving them a call and sending them letters and do things like that just to try and get guys fired up again. Because in some districts, turmoil happens between the brethren, and it gives somebody a bad experience, so they decide, well, I don't need to be a member of that anymore or need to be active in it. So,
right. So you'd say one of the things you're working on is outreach and between to dues current members and to other lodges in the district. Then, okay, that's
definitely, yeah.
That's a really noble thing, and especially when it comes to the Prince Hall Lodge. It's just so important now that we have that opportunity that we actually take advantage of it.
Yeah,
it'd be such a shame not to.
Yeah, the guys over at I started visiting that lodge before our Grand Lodge session where we voted on it. I submitted the paperwork, and if you guys don't know how the process works, basically you have to get this petition almost. You submit it to your secretary. They then submit it to the Grand Lodge of Texas. The Grand Lodge of Texas submits it to their Grand Lodge secretary. Their Grand Lodge secretary then mails it back to the individual lodge. They vote on it, and then it goes all the way around that circle again just to get back to you, just to say, okay, you can go now.
Well, it's like visiting another country.
Sure, definitely. Mm-hmm. But except we're talking 10 miles away from my home.
It's crazy.
So
it was crazy.
And these guys, they're a great group of guys. They really are, and they're seeing what we're doing, and so their DDGM, his name is Patrick, and man, he's an awesome guy. He's from Jamaica, and he is just he's been kind of following our DDGM at every one of the official visits in order to spread awareness. That we're allowed to do this and that everybody's welcome. We're almost including them as an unofficial member of our district.
That's cool.
So it's a good thing. And if you guys have never been to a Prince Hall Lodge, I highly recommend doing it. It's awesome to go in there and see their degree work and see how they open and close lodge. It's a lot different. So it's interesting.
Hey Jordan, do you know when your lodge was chartered?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I can probably find that out for you here in just a second.
Oh, no worries.
Well,
our lodge was chartered in 1886.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay,
yeah.
Is your lodge the only lodge in Wichita Falls?
No, actually, we have 3 lodges in Wichita Falls itself. We have my lodge, 635. We have another lodge called Joseph A. Camp Lodge. That's the lodge where our Scottish Rite Club meets. Okay. And then we have another lodge called Faith Lodge.
Okay.
Now,
you're junior warden in Wichita Falls Lodge right now. Have you held any other offices, or is this your first office?
No, I've been the junior deacon, the senior deacon, the junior warden now, and then back in Hill City Lodge in Austin, I was the senior steward for a little while.
Okay. What is your favorite aspect of Masonry and why?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. My favorite aspect of Masonry, I guess, I wouldn't say, it's kind of a close-knit tie between a couple of different things, but currently my favorite aspect, and it's primarily thanks to joining Scottish Rite, is just how many friends I've made, how many lifelong friends that are forever going to be intertwined with my life from now on, And a lot of these guys, especially up here in my district, there's a handful of them. And while they might be a little bit older than me, they are absolutely some of my best friends in the whole world who I would, give the shirt off my back for, and they would do the same. It's amazing whenever, I have tattoos, I have holes in my ears, some people might approach that and automatically have some judgments to pass on that. But these guys have just genuinely just been happy to have me, or contacting me, putting so much confidence in me that they give me responsibilities to take care of. And for me, that's what it's all about in some ways. We're especially, and statistics show that currently Masonry is a dying art in some ways. And so it's kind of up to us, especially some of us younger guys, to preserve the history, preserve the way we give our memory work for future generations, right? So I got to say that's probably one of my favorite aspect currently. But other than that, it's not just learning that memory work that we have to learn. It's figuring out why more in depth. Why are we sitting in the lodge the way it is? Why is it situated due east and west? Anything of that nature. Just really digging for value in the esoterics itself. That's a thing that I spend a lot of time researching and learning more about. So that's probably the second runner-up, if not tied with the other one.
Okay. What would you say are the strengths and weaknesses of Texan Masonry?
The strengths and weaknesses. Well, the strengths has to do with probably the idea that the greatest state in all of the U.S. has so much preserved Masonic history. And I think that's an important thing because, whenever you join Masonry, you're joining just a lineage of, how our state was started, and I find that to be pretty fascinating. And so that aspect's really great. And the band of brotherhood that we have here. A weakness that I would say that I find often, it doesn't bother me, but I know it's bothered other brothers, is this misconception of having to obtain one specific belief, and I have some brothers that, for instance, I have a brother who is Jewish. He joined York Rite, and he kind of in some ways got pushed away from it for various reasons, and I think that this, I can't speak on that behalf because I'm not York Rite, but anyway, I just think a weakness would be to also get these guys, figure out a way to get membership back up and help with getting these disgruntled brothers back, because I know that there's a lot of issues in other lodges around us. So,
no, I feel you on the some brothers seeing very specific paths of faith being required. It's one of those things that, as somebody who is fairly zealous with their religion and who sees a lot of very strong allusions to his religion, I still try and make sure that we're being inclusive because, we've got brothers of other faiths in the lodge, it's you got to be considerate, and
definitely.
It's actually one of the things that drives me nuts about the York Rite sometimes is that you will have guys who are in the York Rite claim that York Rite is the Christian Rite. And it drives me up the wall because chapter and council are still a free-for-all. It's just like Blue Lodge. Commandery's the only one where you have to be Christian. And they'll still say, like, oh, yes, chapter and council, the whole York Rite is Christian. I'm going, no, dude, no.
Well, even if it was, that's fine, But in Blue Lodge specifically, it's it's a topic that needs to be kind of
we need to be more
outside
educated
the door.
on.
Yeah, sure. There you go.
There's a lack of education regarding non-sectarianism. But
which also it's not something that bothers me specifically. Like I'm open to it. I do subscribe in some ways to a certain spiritual practice, but if I just don't want to see other brothers or other potential candidates to join Masonry get turned away for issues of that nature.
Right. I think in some cases it's unintentional. I mean, it absolutely needs to be. We do need to make sure that we are aware of it and that we're not trying to lean in a certain direction. But I think there's a natural assumption, especially here in Texas, that we most assume that interested candidates are from one particular faith in general, when really it should be inclusive of all of them.
Definitely, I agree. And I know it's a touchy topic at some lodges and in some places, but I just think it's, in some ways, that might be a weakness,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Masters, Wardens, and Secretaries Association. Now, Rhit was telling me about this, and just to confirm, you were involved in starting a Masters, Wardens, and Secretaries Association in Wichita Falls, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, I had found out that, I had to be completely honest. Even whenever I lived in Austin, which I'm confident had a MWSA, I had never heard of it. I didn't know a thing about it. I didn't know it existed at all. So it all sparked and I have Corey Harris to thank for this. It's completely him that inspired me to get this going, and I just saw something that needed to be filled in our district, because our district doesn't have one. It's just an area that needs to happen if we want to work towards getting people fired up about what we're doing. I want us to be a district that people from other districts know about Wichita Falls and our area. So, that's kind of what inspired it. But ultimately, I was the one that brought it before all the lodges. I went to every lodge, and this was what seemed about a year ago now. I went to all the lodges and stood up and asked everybody who would be interested in a Masters, Wardens, Secretaries Association, and I had a pretty good feedback from it, and I think there's a gentleman who is the communications officer now here in the District 88, and I got to have some really good conversation with him. He's a much older man, but he is just so much fun to be around, and he's got such a great sense of humor, and he's very Masonically experienced. He's done it all. So I talked to him, and he basically told me, yeah, there used to be one years ago. It had died or went dark years ago, and so I said, okay, we're going to do this. Like, we need to have this. I don't care if it's me and 4 other people that show up to the meeting. We're going to have this. So, up until the last probably 8 months is whenever I really got on the ball with it. I got a letter written up, mailed it to all the lodges, have them, read it before the lodge, and we went ahead and I scheduled our first meeting coming up April 30th, and the goal is to also have it meet at all the lodges in the district. We're going to kind of cycle through them, and so I got really good feedback on that. But also keep in mind, I have never been in a Masters, Wardens, Secretaries Association. Odds are, since I sparked it, somebody's going to nominate me to be the honcho of it. You know what I mean? So I've been doing a lot of research on it. Thanks. Corey's been answering a lot of my questions. He sent me a copy of his bylaws. And I also found the bylaws that used to exist here in our district. So with starting that, we got a lot of interest in it, but with starting that sparked some other ideas. I found a lodge here nearby called Burke Burnett Lodge. It's within our district, that they had the huge gavel that was used in the district for the traveling gavel. So I'm going to bring back the traveling gavel, so it'll give some guys incentive to go visit other lodges. And then also another brother here who is currently the worshipful master of Faith Lodge, he is working kind of side by side with me to create a district degree team for because there's some lodges here that are very small that sometimes might not have enough people get together to put on an EA or any of the degrees. So we're going to make it a goal to have that at our disposal for guys in our district. So it's been a good experience so far. So
well, congratulations, that's incredible. For any of our listeners who are not aware of what a Masters, Wardens, and Secretaries Association, or MWSA, is, it is an organization for Masters, Wardens, and Secretaries to organize throughout a district and be more unified as a district and coherent. And it's a very valuable tool that most people don't show up to, but really should. So it's a very valuable tool.
Jordan, do y'all have your rules and regs for your travel gavel yet?
We do not. That's something I'm still looking into. I'm sure that somebody has it somewhere. But yeah, I need to learn more about that.
You can rob what we've got from 64th.org. We robbed it from Dallas. 14th District, they do 12 brothers have to show up from that lodge. We did 7. And, with a smaller district, you might even look at a smaller number because it's not about, holding on to that gavel. It's about promoting and it changing hands. So, maybe to get it going, maybe you start out with 4 or just
if anything,
something.
It should change hands as often as possible.
Exactly. So don't make it almost impossible.
That travel gavel will fit right into what you're doing, trying to get the lodges to support each other, especially if you do let it not only be on stated meeting nights, but on degree nights. You can pass the travel gavel on degree nights. That could really support kind of getting your district a little bit tighter together.
Yeah, and I mean that's the aim too. So, yeah, we had the traveling gavel back in my district in Austin, and I remember at one point whenever I was an EA, I got to go visit a lodge down there, and with all the guys from my lodge, and we were able to take the traveling gavel. So that was what prompted the idea of how cool it would be to have that. And then I found out that we actually had the gavel still. And it's a really big gavel. It's like waist high almost. So just a cool incentive, definitely. And that's a good idea about the making a set number of people who make you eligible to get it too. So
what was the biggest obstacle in starting the MWSA?
Well, I can't give you a straight answer on that yet. After our meeting, that's whenever I'll find out. But I think my biggest obstacle is going to be getting people to come out.
Yeah.
I got guys that are, of course, if I say, hey, who's interested in starting this? I got guys who are going to raise their hand all day and think it's a great idea.
And then nobody shows up anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, I need them to show up. But I honestly think our first meeting, which I'll report back to you guys, let y'all know how it goes, but I honestly think our first meeting is going to be pretty good. I'm really confident we're going to have all the masters there at least.
Good.
And I'm confident that I'm going to have the majority of secretaries. So, and I'm inviting past masters too. I want them there. I know that there is stipulations in the bylaws for voting rights and things like that are on the table, but I want people there. I don't care if you're entered apprentice or fellow craft. Obviously, you don't have voting rights, but you can learn. It's valuable. You can learn how to proceed later on whenever you're an officer. So.
Yeah, if you do those things right, you'll make them valuable for everybody. Because when it comes down to voting in an MWSA, there's not a lot of things that have to be voted on besides approving the minutes. Or if you put an event together like ours does, the stock show, they'll vote on buying new pamphlets. So voting at the MWSA is not anything it's cracked up to be. There should be a program there, though, that all lodges and members, EAs and up, should want to come see.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I hope it goes well. So we're going to find out.
Well, and given your level of involvement in your district, you're probably going to get elected to something. So, Godspeed.
Definitely.
I wanted to ask you about Scottish Rite Masonry in Wichita Falls. Now, there's not a valley in Wichita Falls, but there is a Scottish Rite Club. Can you tell us more about your involvement in the Scottish Rite Club of Wichita Falls?
Yeah, so along with you guys, which is how I'm on this show today, listeners, I met these gentlemen who run this podcast because we joined the same class in Fort Worth, Scottish Rite. So it's been a great experience in that regard. But so I was in a hurry to join Scottish Rite because Hal Ray, who is a recently passed Venerable Master of Fort Worth Scottish Rite, him and Mike Haviland, Eskimo, they wanted to start a Scottish Rite Club up here, and Hal did a lot of publicity. Really got out to all the lodges to invite people, and so that kind of put a fire under me to get to join Scottish Rite, because I didn't really want to join something if I can't be active in it. I don't want to. I'm not one of those people who are willing to give up my hard-earned money to an organization and not take something from it. So,
come on, Jordan, join them all.
I believe me, that's been Jeff Bennett. You can ask him. He's one of the guys who really wants me to do the York Rite. But one of these days I'm going to. One of the days I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with you guys. But
Man,
I will gladly do the work for you.
Yeah, I promise. Whenever I do decide to do it, you guys will be the first people I contact. We have York Rite up here. But
I've been told that I do a pretty good Select Master's degree.
Well, that's good.
But no, that's what I tell all the non-York Rite guys. You're not York Rite yet.
Man.
So yeah,
this York Rite guy I know, his name is Gabriel, and that dude, every time I see him, he wants me to join the York Rite.
Oh, it's York Rite this, York Rite that.
York Rite that. Come see us at York
Remember,
Rite.
gentlemen, York Rite is the natural completion of the degree system in Texas.
Right, exactly.
People get mad when I say that.
Right. Eventually, you guys will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile.
Those things are expensive, man. I don't have the money for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But
well, in my mind, I think it's so awesome when guys find their niche. You know what I mean? Because when they're talking like Gabe and those guys, Ricky Cox and all them, DP, he gives me just as much heck. You can tell they found their niche. They love what they're doing.
Yeah.
More power to them.
Yeah, and that so far from my experience with Scottish Rite, this is for me.
It seems like you're coming into it like strong. It's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm just I have Scottish Rite is just right up my alley as far as what I'm trying to do in my Masonic career, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So,
can you tell us more about starting the Scottish Rite Club?
Yeah, so obviously Hal Ray and Mike Haverland, his nickname is Eskimo. They're both KCCH 32nd degrees out of Fort Worth. And Hal, I think, it was the one to spark the idea to get a club going in Wichita Falls. And Eskimo lives in Oklahoma, so that's really close to us. So he was the second-hand man at it. And basically, they started having meetings. They were just more of meetings of how it's going to go. When can we get started? So we joined it in the fall reunion, and which was perfect timing because I went to one of their meetings and Hal sat down. There was a good number of us there. I mean, I say good number, but there was like 20 people, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. And so in December, that was just the sit down. We've kind of had a little bit of a plan on what we're going to do for the next year. And then January rolled around and we all sat down again and we had an even better turnout. It was like 25, 30 people.
That's awesome.
And then, so that January meeting, Hal set everybody down and said, all right, gentlemen, we need to select officers for who's going to be what. And basically, he asked everybody who was willing to do it. And I kept my hand down just because I wanted people who are more experienced to take care of this. Right. And,
surprise.
Yeah. And then, anyway, they start from the treasurer, the secretary, and people who are going to lead chairman. And then they got around to who wants to be president, vice president, and a gentleman named Connor McCaslin, who is one of my Masonic heroes. He knows all the memory work to a T. He's just awesome. He raised his hand and said, I want to go ahead and nominate Jordan Roland for the vice president. And everybody kind of was like, okay. And then Hal asked me, Jordan, would you accept it? And I said, guys, I'm brand new, but I'll accept this, And so that's how that went about. And then a guy named Josh Miller, who's KCCH 32nd degree at Fort Worth also, he took the president, which he is also another awesome guy, knows a lot about history, Masonic history, about the work. Him and I have become pretty good friends because of Scottish Rite. But yeah, so now we're meeting the fourth Tuesday of every month, except this month. We've been really fortunate to have Fort Worth working with us very closely on getting the education programs up there. And this month, on the 24th, we decided we were going to have our club meeting after the Fort Worth Education Committee comes up, and they're going to give us a lecture. A guy named Gary Alexander is going to give us a lecture on fellow craft degree. So we decided we're going to have our meeting promptly after that. So that way I have these Fort Worth guys there so we can really get the people who show up fired up about things in Fort Worth. Because, realistically, we're under the umbrella and auspice of Fort Worth. And for myself, I'm very thankful for that, which is why I try to make it to everything I possibly can, because they're gracious enough to reach their arm out for us, and that's my goal is to with Scottish Rite is up here in Wichita is to get people fired up about it. And the plan is Ken Curry came up and gave us a good talk, and the game plan is within the next 2 years. This next year, I was already pretty much told that I'll be the president, and so with that,
president, man, they're telling you you're president next year.
Yeah, exactly. I've already kind of been Eskimo has already kind of given me the rundown, like you're taking the reins next year. So my goal from now until then is I want a Lodge of Perfection in Wichita Falls. Now, it's a good idea in theory, and I'm really excited about it, and I hope we can make it happen. But Ken kind of gave me a rundown of some things that Sovereign Grand Inspector General Mike Wiggins has said about the having satellite Lodge of Perfections out of Fort Worth. He's not, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the extent of it, but he is not as willing to allow that to happen. Why? I don't really know. But regardless, with Ken Curry's help and you guys too, we're all Scottish Rite Masons. If I can get people involved and excited about what we're doing up here, it's going to happen. So it's been a good experience, and I'm really thankful for the, in any organization you join within the Scottish or within Masonry, for me it is an honor when somebody that has been doing it for many years ask you to perform responsibilities. And I think it's very important. I had a conversation with Eskimo and somebody else, I can't remember somebody was talking about Brad Billings. Brad, if you're listening, I love you to death. But they asked Eskimo, how is Brad able to be so active in Masonry, right? And, I've been asked the same thing. How are you able to find time to do this? And I think it's less about finding time and more about creating urgency to make it a priority. Because if you have something in your life that's a priority, you're going to make time for it, and Masonry is in my opinion, it's worthy for me to give my life and my time for it. So that's the that's the goal. We need to, I want to get people excited, and I'm not asking to be at everything, It's impossible. Some people have kids and family and things going on in their life, but if you're as fired up about Masonry as I am, I want to radiate that and find more people who are willing to do that and give these guys responsibilities so it makes them even more excited, So that's my long spiel of Wichita Falls Scottish Rite. It's been great.
Yeah.
I'm really
I was
glad.
actually about to ask you whether or not the club was going to organize itself into a Lodge of Perfection or not, and you went ahead and answered that already.
Yeah,
I think
that's our goal, so I hope that goes according to plan.
Well, I think it would be one of the most beneficial things ever to see more satellite lodges of perfection, because for any of our listeners that don't know, the lodge
It's heresy, Gabe.
I know it's heresy, right? I'm just going to get hit by the SGIG hammer, but no, the Lodge of Perfection is the first body in Scottish Rite. A Scottish Rite Valley contains 4 bodies. They have the Lodge of Perfection, which is degrees 4 through 14. You have the Chapter Rose Croix, which is 15 through 18. And then you have the Council of Kadosh, which is 19 through 30. And then you have the Consistory, which is 31 and 32. And each body has different responsibilities and all that. But in long time ago, it used to be that everyone had a satellite Lodge of Perfection. And in order to get your Rose Croix degrees, the Kadosh degrees, and the Consistory degrees, you would have to go to a place that had those bodies. Usually it would be like a state capital or a large city or whatever, but you would have a bunch of satellite lodges of perfection. And I'm a big proponent of the idea of lean and agile organizations where, low overhead, you don't need that many people, you're up and running and you're go. And for Scottish Rite, that's the Lodge of Perfection right there, because Rose Croix degrees, you need 1 million people. Kadosh degrees, you need 1 million people. Consistory degrees, at least for the 31st degree, you need a gazillion people. And you need a decent handful of people for the 32nd degree as well. So the Lodge of Perfection, you have 10 degrees, but you run lean and mean on the number of bodies you need for them. So it really makes it a lot easier to do it. And the Lodge of Perfection degrees were modeled to be the craft lodge experience for guys who are going through the Scottish Rite. It is a very intimate, familiar experience. For anyone who's gone through the York Rite, the Lodge of Perfection is a very even mix of the craft, chapter, and council degrees. At least the Scottish Rite equivalent of them. So I love the idea. I would love to see a Wichita Falls Lodge of Perfection. It would just be so cool.
Yeah, we're on our way, hopefully. So, and it all consists of people wanting it as well. So,
and it's got to get tiring, right? The drive. You drove. We just got through with the reunion, and you drove to Fort Worth for the reunion every weekend of the 3-day reunion. That had to be taxing. How do you manage with that?
Well, it's less about the hardest part about doing it is waking up at 4 a.m. To get up, get yourself dressed and prepared, and then. But thankfully, I've had for myself just about every time I've gone down there, other than whenever I was going through the degrees, I've been thankful to find some other people that are willing to come with me. So, and they've always offered to drive. So. That's been pretty great. And those people who are doing it with me are also people who are very active in Scottish Rite, or at least becoming active. So that's been great. I can't take the credit for doing it alone, but I'm thankful that I have guys that are as fired up about Scottish Rite as I am, And driving from Wichita to Fort Worth, it's not a terrible drive. The worst part of it is coming back home because obviously traffic, but if I was pushing the 2.5 hour, 3 hour mark of having to drive somewhere to do this stuff, that's whenever it'd be harder to get myself motivated to go. But an 1.5 hour, 2 hour drive, it's really not so bad. And it's always, especially for our stated meetings and And obviously the reunion next weekend's not next weekend because we're having our club meeting in the education program, but the next few weekends after that, I'm gonna have Saturdays.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
No, it's not gonna be awesome.
Oh, I'm talking. Having free Saturdays or no?
Well, I just mean I like the idea of having a plan, having something to be excited about. The weekends are obviously great. I work hard throughout the week, but at the same time, I like being around you guys. I like being around people at the Scottish Rite building, and like I said at the beginning, I've made so many new friends. I would not be on this show right now if I hadn't met you guys. So, and it's an important aspect. And I may be putting in effort to come down there, but hopefully people see, oh, hey, Jordan's showed up to all this stuff. We should go visit Jordan. And I mean, obviously I'm not asking it, but maybe it'll fire people up to do that. So that's the main reason, and it's just a good time. Every time I've been down there at the temple for a stated meeting or for our reunions, every time I've had a good time. So it's always worth it.
So talking about geography and driving to your local Scottish Rite Valley. I know in Oklahoma, right? I mean, you're close enough to the Red River. Do you see an interest from Oklahoma? Because they have 3 valleys, but, they're like Tulsa, McAllister, and Guthrie, which are, in the east, and 2 of them are in the northern part of the state. Do you see an interest from like Duncan or Lawton or Altus? And if so, are there any issues with brothers from those areas coming to, I guess, your meetings?
No, I've actually seen a good handful of people from Oklahoma that are coming down. I actually met a brother at our reunion who I had spoken with on Facebook. He had contacted, because I do have a Wichita Falls Scottish Rite Facebook page, so please like it. I would really appreciate that. But he actually contacted me on that page, and he said he was from Oklahoma, and we talked, and I let him know when our meetings were, and he actually came down to the Fort Worth reunion and came up to me, and he's a white cap. He's been very active in McAllister, and so he's planning on coming out to our club. We got a couple of guys from Frederick, Oklahoma, and Walters, Oklahoma. We got a couple of guys from Oklahoma, and I definitely encourage it. I don't care. Like I've said before, if you're an entered apprentice, if you're a fellow craft, you're a master mason, you're not even a Scottish Rite Mason. Obviously, we want Scottish Rite Masons to come up. All of these people are welcome at the Scottish Rite meetings, at the Scottish Rite Club meetings. We are not a valley. We are just a Scottish Rite Club. We're a group of guys that are working hard to make a valley or to make a lodge of perfection. But right now it's open to anybody. We're not divulging any secrets. We're not opening our club meetings in any specific way. Obviously we give a good welcome, invoke the aid of deity, and we pledge our flags, and then we just kind of get down to business. I'm going to try. I'm on the education committee in Fort Worth, so I'm going to try and start getting some short little education programs for people that show up, so I can give at the club meetings. But yeah, anybody, and you don't even have to be a Scottish Rite Mason or a Mason in general to be able to come out to our club meetings. So,
So speaking of education, you are working through the Master Craftsman program right now. How are you liking it so far?
Well, I just received it in the mail yesterday, and it's pretty cool so far. From what I've looked at, I purchased the Craftsman program that has the Scottish Rite Ritual Monitor and Guide, made by Arturo de Hoyos, who is the Grand Archivist and historian at the House of the Temple for the Supreme Council. He's a white cap, and he's even a white cap with honors.
The Grand Cross of Honor.
The Grand Cross of Honor, exactly. So
he's also a Texas past master.
He is from McAllen, Texas. Yep. And he's the one that's, I believe, is overseeing this program. And basically, for what it for people who are Scottish Rite Masons and are interested in learning more about this, you just go to the Supreme Council's website, you go to the store, you click on the portion where it says books or something like that, and then it has education programs. And I think it was $40 for this awesome book, guys. Like, I cannot express to you, whenever I got this copy of the book, I was expecting a little softback book for $40, and they send you a very, very beautiful hardbound book that has very pretty gold inlay on the front and back with some cool symbolism. Beautiful book. And I've already thumbed through it, and it goes very in depth with all the degrees and even some lectures on some other things regarding Scottish Rite. And then you get a little quiz. It's about 20 questions long with one essay that you have to write. And the goal is to have you go through the quiz. It's not in chronological order according to the book. And you go through the quiz and with the book, and as well as a copy of A Bridge to Light. And once you do that, I think they have a total of 6 or 7 quizzes you do. Then you get if you've passed it and done good on it, you get a certificate, and you get a little goodie bag of things from the Supreme Council. And it also goes down in your file, that you've completed it. So, so I think I'm really going to like it, and I'm going to be on the education committee. I guess I am on the education committee that's chaired by Bill Crow down in Fort Worth. So it's definitely something that's encouraged, and I think it's going to be good.
Right, and just a note too. You were talking about the website. The books are cheaper to buy as part of the class than they are to buy individually.
They definitely are. A copy of this book is typically about $70 to $80.
Oh wow! Okay, I didn't know it was that dramatic of a difference.
Yeah, if you buy the book alone, there's no point in buying just the book alone. I mean, the money obviously is going to a good cause, to a good reason, but if you're trying to save a little money and as well as challenge yourself to learn a little bit more about the Scottish Rite, you might as well at least try to do the quiz here. So,
what is your favorite Scottish Rite degree, and if you have, and why? And if you have more than one, that's okay.
Oh man, that's a tough one. Obviously, I love the 14th degree. Beautiful degree. Maybe some other time I can talk about one little minor issue I have about that degree, but overall, I love that degree. It's so beautiful, especially when Jim Rogerson's the one doing it, or James. It's just awesome. The symbolism, what it's working toward, where the story is headed, or the climax of that story. It's great. My other favorite one, and one that's kind of, in essence, maybe a little bit boring to watch, is the 27th degree.
That one's great.
I can't remember the name of it. Do you know the name of it?
I'm totally blanking on it.
Why can't I remember the name of it?
It's the one with the choir of angels and all that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the 27th. It's the Knight of the Sun, Prince Adept.
Yes.
I really like that degree, just because of the sheer amount of symbolism that's in that, and because whenever you learn the things that are in that degree, you can then apply that knowledge to every other degree. Learning about the symbolism of what Archangel represents, you can go back to pretty much every other degree and find something that tied to, So I really like that as well. Obviously, I like the Knight Rose Quad degree. There really isn't too many degrees that I don't like, but I mean, there is a few that are in some ways hard to watch because of unless you have a really good degree team. Some degrees are just a little bit hard to watch at times, which that's a hard thing to do. For people who aren't Scottish Rite Masons listening, there's a lot of production that goes in to these degrees. You have to cast hundreds of people to be able to put on a a reunion. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it. The guys try extremely hard, and they work hard at it, and so it's worth it no matter what. But it's really nice whenever you see, like in the 14th degree that we just saw this weekend, whenever you get to see it with people who just have every part memorized, it's just, you get to see the beauty of the degree, you know.
Something you're saying about the amount of work that goes into it. When we were candidates last fall, I was really impressed because my thought process was, wow, this is amazing how many hundreds of man hours go into this. And having gotten involved in this past reunion, my thought process is, it's amazing how many thousands of man hours go into this. Because it's not hundreds of man hours, it's thousands of man hours that go into this. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. It definitely is. I mean, these guys, you have to be dedicated to be willing to even be on stage, you know, to just to be on stage. Some people, it's just not for them. They don't like that. But and there's some people who are up there that don't like it, but they're doing it because they know they're helping somebody learn. And that's a good aspect, you know, because when you go through your Blue Lodge degrees, Scottish Rite degrees, I'm sure York Rite degrees, it's all about the candidate. And if it's taken seriously, the candidate is going to walk away from it in awe, or he'll be able to have those memories for the rest of his life, to look back and remember the gentleman who conferred the degrees on him, and remember the guy who escorted him around the lodge. And again, that's something I really push whenever we're about to start degrees, especially degrees that I'm going to be in Blue Lodge. Guys, please turn your phones off. It's so important to turn your phones off, and try not to crosstalk. We got one guy that's going to be the designated prompter, you know, because I just think it's important. I always tell candidates, and I only say it because it was told to me from Oscar Worm, the guy who taught me my memory work. Before I went in for my EA degree, he looked at me with a very serious face and pointed at the side of his head and said, "Listen very carefully." So whenever you got these guys that are cross-talking and phones going off and whatever, it's hard to focus whenever you're trying to listen. So
a phone going off in a degree set me off real fast. I don't think I've seen it happen in one of ours, at least since I've been.
No, I heard
the most egregious thing I've ever seen several times is when people get a phone call and the phone goes off in the middle of whatever, meeting, degree, anything, and they answer the phone. And then they have like 30 seconds of like, no, I can't talk, I'm in the middle of something. It's like, just don't answer your phone.
Yeah.
Just don't answer the phone.
Reply with a text. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You're going to...
No, I heard the guys on the round table say when it comes to cell phones, in a degree, never. In a business meeting, sometimes.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, one time in a degree, obviously not going to go into specifics of the degree, but there was a part where, the senior deacon was escorting the candidate around, and the senior deacon, while he was walking, another guy was laughing or giggling at him, like they were kind of talking while he's walking the guy around. And the senior deacon let the candidate run into the burning tapers. Of course, it's not burn. They're not burning. It's light bulbs, but the thing holding it fell down. All 3 light bulbs shattered across the ground, and then the master slammed down his gavel and said, "Everybody, be still and be quiet." So they stood there very awkwardly, and then somebody came running up to get some of the glass up and put another shoe on the candidate, and that wouldn't have happened. And I remember this very vividly. This was down in Austin. It all happened because guy wasn't paying attention.
Because he was getting distracted by somebody else. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's horrendous.
I know it, man. But at the same time, you can't help but, with my sense of humor, you can't help but laugh
Well,
in
and
some
it's one of
ways.
those things that gets much funnier as time passes.
Sure,
Like,
definitely.
because
Definitely.
it becomes one of those, hey, you remember when that happened? Oh, yeah, that was great.
Right, yeah.
But during the time of the incident, it is often horrifying.
Oh, the most awkward part was whenever they just stood him there and everybody's trying to be quiet. He's just standing right next to where that just happened. Keep in mind the state the candidate's in.
No kidding.
Just sitting there real awkward,
That's bad.
It just comes back to, it may be your 100th entered apprentice degree, but it's the candidate's only entered apprentice degree.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and you got to remember that. I typically shower before a degree, so I feel like I'm doing my part.
There you go, man.
Nice.
All right, gentlemen. It has been a wonderful, productive conversation. It is exciting to hear about Masonry in Wichita Falls, and specifically what Jordan's doing with Scottish Rite Masonry there. I picked a quote of the week that I feel really fits with what Jordan's doing right now up in Wichita Falls, and it's real short. That which we do for ourselves dies with us. That which we do for others lives forever. And that quote is by our illustrious brother Albert Pike, 33rd degree, past sovereign grand commander of the Supreme Council, ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, United States of America, in his book, Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. So, that's a big old title and a big old book title, but it just bears repeating. That which we do with others, for others, lives forever. And I think that's really appropriate for what Jordan's doing right now. So, gentlemen, if we could go Rhit, Grant, Billy, myself, we could do closing thoughts, and then we'll let Jordan have the table. Rhit, go for it.
So closing thoughts for me. I think the whole reason this podcast came about is because I saw Jordan kind of burn in his own path. And I'm always attracted and impressed by Masons that do that, because it's hard to do nowadays. You have so many guys telling you this is what Masonry's about, or saying that old adage, that's not the way we used to, we've always done it. But he's just been cutting his own path, and I can't recommend enough for brothers to do that themselves. Just, if you see a hole, get up and fill it. Do your thing, make something happen. And next thing you know, you turn around and you've got results piling up all around you. So, tear it up.
Definitely.
Along that note, Jordan, what you're doing is impressive. The time commitment that you're putting into it certainly speaks volume about your character. So it was good to meet you during our Scottish Rite degrees. Of course, I was only there for the terminal degrees, but that's a longer story. And I look forward to knowing you as you grow Wichita Falls in Masonry in that area.
Okay. Yeah, no, so my closing thoughts are really simple. It's, again, Jordan, you show that if you see a need, don't be afraid to be the guy who stands up to fill that need. I think everybody needs a lot more people like you that are willing to stand in and, make your craft better. It is your craft, right? So if you're not being an active part of it, don't sit around waiting for someone else to be that piece that's missing. So, thanks, again for it. It's very inspiring to see all this activity that you've come in with.
Yeah, and it's not all me too. I have the perfect guys around me to get me fired up to do this. So I can't take the credit for a lot of the things that are happening in our district, but maybe I might be one of the flames that are growing. So I hope that it keeps going.
And my closing thoughts are, listeners, Jordan is an excellent example of somebody who's on fire with zeal. It's a very real example of being able to make a difference, especially when you have challenges like, the example we see here in Wichita Falls is that it's very far away from the closest Scottish Rite Valley, right? The closest ones are Lubbock and Fort Worth. And so there's a real need for, infrastructure-wise, something to be in Wichita Falls. And Jordan has helped making that happen. And so if you have that need in your town, do it. Take care of it.
One person that also has really helped me out, his name is Will Bogart up here. You guys, I might have introduced y'all to him down there this weekend, but that man is just as fired up about this stuff as I am. He's helped me brainstorm on new ideas. So I honestly feel like he should get as much praise as I've been getting, because that man, he's been through a lot recently, and he's a golden Mason as well. So. And yeah, I mean, obviously, not here to try and get recognition for anything, but really, I'm genuinely here just to, in some ways, hopefully, my actions with the craft or without the craft, I just want to get people to understand what Masonry is, and what its potential is, and maybe spark some interest in a young guy. I look forward to the day. Obviously, I don't want to grow old, but I look forward to the day where I meet a young man that's just like me, and teaching him his work, and then watch him just flourish.
Yeah.
So the craft has been an incredible experience for me. It's totally changed my ways from the way I was to the way I am now. I'm constantly seeking more knowledge and constantly seeking more friendships, and yeah, I mean, again, I'm really thankful for you guys, and I appreciate you inviting me onto the show, and I'm always happy to be here again, or whatever y'all would like to do. And again, and this goes with you guys and goes for anybody listening, if you ever need any assistance with anything that you just need a volunteer for, if you ask me or contact me, and I think it's a just reason, odds are I'll help you in any way I can. Mm-hmm. So, and anybody listening, I do have a Facebook. Please feel free to add me. You can email me. Please like the Wichita Falls Scottish Rite page. I would appreciate that. And yeah, anybody who listening also is more than welcome to contact me if you're interested in visiting a lodge up here, especially Scottish Rite. We'd be more than happy to have you. So some of our lodges up here are known for some of their meals. So who doesn't like walking away super full? So
well, thank you for coming on, Jordan. If listeners, if you'd like to learn more, you can find us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. If you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org. That's 64th.org. You can learn more about our upcoming event, Texas MasoniCon, at www.texasmasonicon.com, and that's texasmasonicon.com. We are
got a new one.
I know, way easier to say. Texas Mason Icon.
Better.
So Texas MasoniCon. We are at Texas MasoniCon on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The event itself is on September 16th, and you can pre-order tickets for $45.
15th. Sorry, 15th.
Did I say 16th?
Yeah, you said 16th, I think.
I got 16 rolling around in my mind. Anyway, it's on September 15th, and you can pre-order tickets for $45 until August 15th, and that's when they go to the door price, and the door price is $55. So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. It has been an excellent evening, and I have enjoyed talking about Wichita Falls Masonry with Jordan quite a bit.
Thank you very much.
It was quite fun.
I appreciate it.
For realsies. All right, gentlemen, this is Rhit Moore signing off.
Grant Gates signing off for realsies.
Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
This is Jordan Roland signing off.
Okay. Yeah, no, so my closing thoughts are really simple. It's, again, Jordan, you show that if you see a need, don't be afraid to be the guy who stands up to fill that need. I think everybody needs a lot more people like you that are willing to stand in and, make your craft better. It is your craft, right? So if you're not being an active part of it, don't sit around waiting for someone else to be that piece that's missing. So, thanks, again for it. It's very inspiring to see all this activity that you've come in with.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not all me too. I have the perfect guys around me to get me fired up to do this. So I can't take the credit for a lot of the things that are happening in our district, but maybe I might be one of the flames that are growing. So I hope that it keeps going.
And my closing thoughts are, listeners, Jordan is an excellent example of somebody who's on fire with zeal. It's a very real example of being able to make a difference, especially when you have challenges like, the example we see here in Wichita Falls is that it's very far away from the closest Scottish Rite Valley, right? The closest ones are Lubbock and Fort Worth. And so there's a real need for infrastructure-wise something to be in Wichita Falls. And Jordan has helped making that happen. And so if you have that need in your town, do it. Take care of it.
One person that also has really helped me out, his name is Will Bogart up here. You guys, I might have introduced y'all to him down there this weekend, but that man is just as fired up about this stuff as I am. He's helped me brainstorm on new ideas. So I honestly feel like he should get as much praise as I've been getting, because that man, he's been through a lot recently, and he's a golden Mason as well. So